Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Cheese Crowd Live. Happy New Year, and welcome to all of you and to our new subscribers. I am James, the Real Cheese Project, and this is Cheese Crowd Live. This evening's is going to be all about slowing things down a little, taking time to taste properly, to hear directly from the people who make and pair our food, and to understand why certain cheeses, wines, and accompaniments work so beautifully together. Tonight we're focusing on Golden Say, a washed rind cheese made by Jake Wigmore at Village Made Dairy, paired with Filbert's oregano and lemon olives, and a delicious radicchio, plus some very tasty indeed lemon shortbreads. Not that I've had any so far. Yes, I have. Let me, without further ado, introduce my guests. So this evening, I'd love to welcome you to Jake Wigmore. I'm delighted to be joined by Jake this evening, all the way from Village Made Cheese. Whereabouts are you at the moment, Jake? Where are you based in the UK?
We're in Risley in Berkshire.
Risley in Berkshire. And I'd obviously love to bring in Catherine, our Master of Wine, who's guiding us through tonight's wine pairing. Good evening, Catherine. How are you?
I'm very well. Good evening to you too.
Good to see you. Changing the format up a little bit this evening, we're going to be keeping our guests online all night, so you don't have to just look at me, which is a great thing to do. So we're going to go through a little guided tasting. Before we do that, ladies and gentlemen, the housekeeping is you've got a comments bar where you can put your comments in, and at the end of the show this evening we will highlight some of those questions for Catherine, Jake, or myself, and we'll try our very best to answer those for you. Okay, so let's go through the guided tasting. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you'll know that you've received one of these little booklets inside your goodie box this week, which includes a tasting card on the back. Now, the tasting card is actually the structured approach to tasting cheese, which is the official format from the Academy of Cheese, of which we're training partners. And there's several guests that actually mentioned to me before that they'd like to run through this and taste the cheese professionally, how we should be tasting cheese. So we're going to go for it. And we've got three great people here, or two great people, including myself, who are going to be showing you how to taste cheese. And I'm slightly nervous because we've got to say all the good things about this cheese, because we've got the lovely Jake with us this evening. So we're going to make sure we're honest about this cheese. And you know what? Seriously, there's nothing wrong with this cheese. It's absolutely brilliant. And it's quite difficult for me to do tastings like this, because every cheese we have is always brilliant. So you make your own marks for scores on the right-hand side and keep that to yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so for the rind, how would we assess this cheese, Jake? The rind being?
So it's as you said, a washed rind. So, but with a bit of a twist. So generally washed rind cheeses are washed frequently over the course of weeks or sometimes months. Golden Say just has one wash. So it matures for the majority of its time anaerobically, so sealed in a vacuum seal. It gets a wash in brine when it comes out of there, and then it's left on the shelves in our maturing room to grow this lovely natural rind that kind of peeks through the washed rind texture that's underneath it. So that's why you get a little bit of that kind of pinkiness, but mainly the candidum white mold is coming through as kind of the primary feature of the rind.
So it's a gentle and subtle wash rind, which is dominated by a mycelium of Penicillium candidum that's joining up the dots on top of the cheese, offering a slightly interesting nose to the cheese as well, quite an interesting aroma. So if we look at the paste of this cheese, would we say it's even, crumbly, moussey, crystalline, wholly bluing, or has cracks running through it? I think if we look at that right now, it's relatively even throughout that cheese. There's maybe a few little holes, but for me, I would describe that cheese as being even. Jake, what would you say?
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of not which is typical of all the hard cheeses that we make. Doesn't have that kind of very dry texture to it that, say, like a mature cheddar or something like that might have to it. It has a lot more moisture, these cheeses, and just has that kind of supple texture to it. And as you say, that kind of knits it together in a nice way with some spacing, but it's generally quite a solid texture throughout.
It does have a really nice kind of give to it as well, like a springiness to it, which I really enjoy with this cheese. It's delicious. Okay, thank you. So we're going to go with that as even. If you have a few holes in the cheese as well, you might want to note those in your comments at the bottom of your tasting card there as well. But I'll let you form an opinion of your Golden Say tasting at the very end, and you can write your own little cheat notes so you can reflect on that when you buy it again from a good cheesemonger's. So let's move on to aroma. So we're going to give the cheese a really lovely smell. I'm going to go for the paste first, so the internal part of the cheese here. Now for me, Catherine, why don't you give us a little opinion on what you feel about the smell of the paste of this cheese?
Well, when I first smelt it earlier, it was very sort of fudgy and caramelly, and a little bit sort of lactic and milky. But now actually those florals are coming out more. There's sort of floral notes as well. It's rather lovely.
I've got to admit, the first thing I picked up on was the floral notes. I really love that kind of flowery, floral, like white blossom notes I'm getting from this cheese. Jake?
Yeah, I mean, I always think it's amazing how like the contrast really between kind of the smells that are on the rind come through very kind of earthy and almost sort of vegetal. And then, yeah, there's a definite kind of milky sweetness, which kind of hits you as quite different to the smell that's coming off the rind, definitely.
So let's talk a little bit more in detail about the rind. And it really is quite an exciting rind. For me, it's got a slightly farmy note, like a really good farm. You know, when you go into a farm on a summer's day, when you've got dry hay and you've got, the barny, farmy kind of note. I'm getting that from the rind. It's really quite interesting. I'm also picking up some vegetal and fungal notes at the same time. A tiny touch of ammonia, but not too much. That's what I picked. Catherine, what was your notes on that, do you think?
I agree with that sort of touch of ammonia, but as well for me, as well as the vegetal and the earthy notes, there's like that underbrush quality that you get on forest floors when it's wet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I've underplayed the forest floor earthy note. I think you're right. I think it's more earthy forest floor.
But
Delicious.
It provides a really lovely contrast to when you smell the paste in the middle. It's lovely.
It does. Okay, so let's do. Everybody wants to do this right now. I'm certainly really wanting to do this. Let's taste Golden Say live online for the cheese crowd. So let's go for simple flavors to start with. So you get the cheese. I will definitely put the rind in as well, ladies and gentlemen. I'm allowing the fat to coat my mouth. It's really, really delicious cheese. It's got a really lovely deep sweetness to it, which is kind of the weighty part for me, is that sweet, almost like a caramel sweetness through the middle, a light caramel sweetness. I'm thinking of Caramac, that kind of Caramac sweetness. On the and it's, oh my goodness, and it's giving me more sweetness towards the end. But I've also got this lovely umami savory note as well. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I think that sums it up perfectly. It's quite a young cheese, like in the grand scheme of hard cheeses, really, being only around 4 months old. It kind of holds on to that milky sweetness, I think, because of that younger age profile that it has. But yeah, it's a lovely kind of sweetness that comes through on the paste itself. And it's kind of one of the beauties of Guernsey milk, using Guernsey milk in cheese making, is as you say, it has that kind of butteriness that really like lingers on your palate. So it kind of just stays there really. Like it just, you can feel it for quite a while after you've swallowed the cheese. Like it just kind of lingers, and you get all sorts of like different things coming back on your palate. And then having the rind with it kind of just balances it out nicely with like a mix of, again, those kind of earthy notes coming through on top of like the sweetness, I think.
Yeah. It's delicious. It's delicious. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think with this, I'm going to definitely mark it as sweet and savoury as my taste simple flavours. And then we'll move to the more complex flavours: dairy, vegetal and herbaceous, fruity, floral, animal, fungal and fermented, and mineral, chemical. I go back into your cheese and give it another go. Catherine, what's your thoughts on this?
So I see this cheese really ticks boxes for me, because I like wines that have this kind of profile as well, where when you taste it, there's a progression in flavors, but at the same time, it's quite gentle and understated. It's a bit like a sort of a steel fist in a velvet glove. You've got this sense of delicacy, but actually it's deceptively complex and concentrated. And you talked about the length, Jake. It's the thing that blows me away about this cheese. When I first tasted it, when I had to do the matching, I couldn't believe the length on the finish and how it carried, and how you still got this clarity of flavors coming through, but on this lovely, delicate level.
Yeah.
It feels like quite an intellectual cheese, because it requires some thought to really appreciate it. But if you pay attention, I initially sort of that lovely dairy creaminess that's almost slightly buttery, that comes from both texture and flavor. But those herbaceous floral characters still kick in, but there's a sweetness there and a fruitiness that continues on the finish. And then that lovely little fudgy bit as you run through to the finish. And if you get a bit of rind as well, you then have earthy undertones that linger, which just add extra dynamics. So there's a huge
slightly
amount
fermented. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, really layered. And I just think that makes it, pretty exceptional.
I think it's quite a complicated cheese.
Yeah.
But not just got, as you said, it's got so many levels. I mean, I'm looking at the complex flavors on the structured approach to tasting cheese, and I'm hitting on dairy, vegetal, fruity, animal, fungal, fermented especially, and I'm even getting mineral, I'm getting mineral, not chemical, but I'm getting a minerality towards the end, which is stimulating me even more. It's a big cheese, Jake. It's really, really good. So if we go then to the length and the complexity of this cheese, this is still giving me a lot of enjoyment. You can taste some cheeses. I think we'll all agree in the room that some cheeses you can taste, like I suppose some wines, where the taste gives you a rush and then drops incredibly quickly. And this cheese is none of that. It gives you a taste and another taste, another taste, another taste, another taste, and continues. It leaves me with a lovely, it finishes for me with a lovely sweetness and minerality towards the finish, just gently petering out, but it's a beautiful cheese. So I think the length and complexity, which I'm going to mark as a 5, high on this one, given the style of cheese. And then, ladies and gentlemen, cheese crowd, do then plant your comments below and let us know what you think of that cheese. I'll let you keep it as your little secret. Hopefully you'll be able to collect all of the cards and then go back to your cards and choose a cheese for your perfect cheese board, given what you've written about them. So I'm now going to continue our evening just by putting everything together. So let's properly assess the cheese by using our tasting card, which we've just done. So the next stage is let's taste the cheese, let's taste the olives, and see how the contrasts work, how the salt, acidity, and freshness lift one another up and help each element sing. So this cheese has a delicious buttery depth. It really has a really delicious buttery depth. It's got everything going on, we know. Let's now try it with the olives. And if you have bought the wine from Catherine, do try it with the wine as well. So I love the gentle sweetness that this cheese gives. It's insane. The olives bring freshness and salinity that sharpen the palate and highlight the cheese's milky, savory depth. Let's get some of the Verdicchio. Now, the Verdicchio has a really bright acidity, which kind of cuts the richness of the cheese, while the citrus and subtle bitterness echo the lemon and olive, keeping the pairing fresh, savory, and balanced. Try the cheese again after the olives, and you'll notice how the flavors reset and open up. It's a small pairing, but a very intentional one. I think it works.
It brings out the sweetness even more, the olives.
It really does.
Yeah, it's really nice.
What a beautiful tasting.
Neil's commented here, because he said the olives can dominate the cheese a bit. When I had the cheese, then the olives, I felt the olives dominated. But then when I had the cheese again afterwards, then the sweetness in the cheese was elevated.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's really good. Okay.
So you had 2 bites of cheese to 1 bite of olive.
Okay. We have to measure that.
Yeah.
Jake, let's get on with some questions for you. So, Jake, Golden Say is a great reference point for modern British cheeses. It is a modern British cheese. What was the original idea behind it, and how did it find its identity?
Yeah, so we make a pecorino style cheese called Spenwood. It's actually 40 years this year since we started making Spenwood. Not me, my mum started making it. And Spenwood has like that naturally sweet kind of nutty characteristic that you get from sheep's milk cheeses. And kind of having made that for so many years and kind of having refined it over the years, also making Guernsey milk cheeses alongside it, we just kind of wanted to delve into that a bit and like apply those methods of cheese making that we'd learned over the years with Spenwood to the Guernsey milk. It just kind of seemed like an obvious decision, really, that can't really believe how long it took to decide to do it. But yeah, and as we found, it would bring through more of that kind of savory, like buttery flavor and texture than we were used to with Spenwood. And Spenwood is a very popular cheese kind of amongst chefs and cheesemongers, and we kind of wanted to create something that people that were familiar with it would be able to use as kind of a reference point. And so it's so nice to maybe have, I mean, we often now have it on a cheese board alongside Spenwood, and it's a lovely kind of pairing in itself for either cheese, because you kind of have one that sits as like a much sweeter, nuttier profile, one that sits much more savory and buttery and milky, but both very similar in characteristics. Spenwood is delicious amount of time.
Delicious.
So, and so that was kind of the initial idea behind it, I guess.
And Village Made Dairy is really rooted in its place, been there for a long time. How do the land and your chosen supply of Guernsey milk and the seasons help shape Golden Sage, you think?
Yeah, so we source the majority of our milk from Lacey's family farm in High Wycombe. So it's about 95%, I say, of our milk comes from there. We also have a lovely small farm just down the road from us called Heckfield Home Farm, which is part of the Heckfield Place Hotel. And it's kind of about 5% of the milk comes from there. It's kind of a bit of a kind of top up, but yeah, it's they're both very like small holdings, really, in terms of Lacey's is around 200 cows, I think. Heckfield is around 50 cows. So There's a real kind of locality to that, for one thing, which is always really important to us, is kind of where we source the milk from, and we always try and source it as locally as we possibly can. And in terms of it changing year to year, I mean, one of the most noticeable things is the color, really. So you kind of, you notice slightly less of the golden color coming through in these batches that are made with the winter milk. So there's just slightly less beta carotene in Guernsey milk at that time of year. And then as the cows go onto grass in the kind of spring, early summertime, that's when they start eating the fresh grass. Their early lactation milk as well starts to kind of lift that carotene content. So you start to notice the color coming through even more as we head into spring and summer, which is really interesting to see.
Yeah, I wonder if it's quite interesting. Where my business, Number 2 Pound Street, is situated, separate to the Real Cheese Project, we take Lacey's Farm milk, which is a very, very good milk. It's quite interesting as you think about the time of year you get your milk and tasting your milk and seeing how it tastes there and then. So winter milk compared to summer milk, and how the fat is, and the fat towards the end of the lactation. It's going to be more cream, more fat in the milk in the winter time, slightly less in the summertime. It's quite interesting to think about that as well as a milk tasting as well. But the milk at Lacey's Farm is wholesome. It's great. It's really super yummy, being Guernsey milk, which I believe is a type 2 milk as well, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I think it does depend on the cows that they have. I think that some can be A2 and some can be B2. But it's amazing milk. Yeah, we're very lucky. We kind of have had we're very lucky to use them as a supplier for so many years now. And we've kind of grown together. They've passed on to, I think, their third generation now. We're obviously moving into the second generation, so we're kind of growing together, and it's a lovely relationship to have.
So for those of you that don't know the milk at all, Lacey's Farm is based in High Wycombe. They're open farm shop as well, and it's a good place to go get some goodies as well, some good meats, cheese, etc., etc. They're a lovely little farm shop as well, so do support them. They're a family business, ladies and gentlemen.
They're double.
Sorry, Catherine.
Their double cream's amazing.
Oh yeah, it's ridiculous, and it makes a very good flat white at Number 2 Pound Street, by the way. So does working with Guernsey milk give you any challenges with that fat level?
Yeah, definitely. So for some context, it's generally around sort of 5% butter fat, give or take. The kind of Frisian Holstein black and white cows, your more traditional milk, sits more around sort of 4%. So it's amazing for soft cheese. So we use it for a number of soft cheeses as well, like brie style cheeses. And you don't have too much trouble with that at all. We do have to be a bit more careful with hard cheese making with it, and kind of adjust our make slightly, depending on, we might take off more of the whey, or we might add a little bit more pressure when we're pressing the cheese, just depending on kind of the time of year and how the milk is coming across, really. And yeah, you have to be careful of lipolysis a bit as well, which is kind of that slightly sicky taste that you get in like it's oddly like a nice flavor in some ways. It's what Parmesan will have. It will have that kind of slight kind of sickiness to it, for lack of a better word. But you do have to be careful with Guernsey milk in particular, with aged Guernsey milk cheeses. That can become quite excessive, that lipolysis, which kind of works well with this, I think. And part of the reason why we didn't want to kind of age it too far, because you kind of sit nicely in that younger age profile and you don't kind of risk too much of that coming through. Whereas if you were to make sort of like a mature cheddar from it, you might kind of experience that much later into the maturation.
And what does this type of milk allow you to express in Golden Say then that you wouldn't otherwise perhaps in, let's dare I say it, Holstein milk?
I think kind of but the benefits kind of outweigh the challenges that it presents, really, because you just, as we found, you get that kind of lovely, unique buttery mouthfeel, which I find is quite unique, really, to our Guernsey milk cheeses, and particularly tasting kind of other hard cheeses that might be made in a similar way. You don't tend to get that like butteriness like it. So it's a bit of sort of a blessing and a curse in lots of ways. And obviously the kind of the amazing color that comes through, and you get that contrast between the rind and the paste, which is from anyone who doesn't know, the Guernsey breed passes a lot of keratin into their milk when they eat the grass. So generally, Friesian Holstein cows will eat it and just pass it through. The Guernsey breed absorbs it into their milk, so that's why you get that keratin coming through into the milk and eventually into the cheese. So yeah, it's it doesn't come without its challenges, but
for sure. And for you, Jake, what's your hope that people experience with this cheese, and how do you mostly enjoy the cheese as well? So what do you want people to get out of this cheese, and how do you how do you enjoy this cheese? What do you enjoy about it?
I think it's kind of the uniqueness I hope it brings to the cheese board, or to cheesemongers. If someone's tasting it alongside some other cheeses, we're always trying to innovate, really. We're never really trying to directly copy a style of another cheese. Like, we always like sort of innovating and doing things a bit differently. So you've got elements of a kind of mild cheddar in there, a little bit of maybe Alpine sweetness. It's kind of got a nod to that European style of cheese, with being like originally like a pecorino method rather than a cheddar method. So it's kind of merging quite a few of these unique qualities together into one final package that's hopefully quite different to anything else out there, I guess. I personally, it's a little bit against the grain, but as nice as it is at room temperature warmed up, and you get so much more flavor coming out of it, I also 100%. Love it out of the fridge because it has this amazing kind of bite to it. And depending,
we had that conversation, didn't we?
Yeah, depending how you're serving it, there's kind of not many cheeses that I would recommend eating straight out of the fridge, but it's different, to be honest. It's like, it obviously has so much more complexity being kept out like this, but it has this amazing kind of, if anyone does get a chance to try it straight out of the fridge, it has this kind of really toothsome, like, nice bite to it, which, if you're making sort of a sandwich or something like that with a bit of pickle, that goes really, really nicely, I think.
I love the word toothsome. It's great. And straight out the fridge is something we discussed in the interview. And for the cheese crowd and anybody else that's watching for that matter, do go on to the Real Cheese Project website and hit the link that says The Bite, and you can read the full interview that Jake and I had a few weeks ago about the cheese and the story and where it comes from, etc. It's quite a lovely read, even if I do say so myself. But it's a good read. So before we move to wine, thank you very much, Jake, for your answers to those questions. Before we move to wine, I want to talk briefly about the olives as well. Thank you so much to Filberts for supporting the Real Cheese Project with the olives this evening, with oregano and lemon. These are Halkidiki olives, and they're infused with lemon and oregano. They're marinated for a light flavor. They're great with cheese and lighter styles of wine. I think they work really well this evening. Filberts are, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, based in Somerset. And I met the owners of Filberts when I was at a cheese judging competition last year, and we had a long conversation about what we were doing. And they were very interested in what we did at the Real Cheese Project, and they source very good ingredients from all over the world that are more ethical and more sustainable, and quite tidy packaging as well. They're very clever what they do. And they work perfectly in my pocket with a piece of pocket cheese. Just grab out your olives and grab out your cheese. Happy days. Everything's good. So Catherine Darts, here we are. wine tasting time it is again. My first question for you this evening, Catherine, is what drew you to the Verdicchio as the right match for Golden Say tonight?
I ummed and ahed with this one actually, and I was lucky to have a nice substantial piece of the cheese to to try with different wines while I made a decision. And in the end, I settled on the Verdicchio, partly because it's from the Marche, and the Marche, you know, you're heading into the land where you get lots of, well, Pecorino grape is planted as well. And so that link with the Pecorino and Wigmore sort of took me there as well. But as I said earlier, the cheese, despite its complexity and its layers, is quite gentle. There's a delicacy to it as well. And I really didn't want to overpower it. I wanted something that would provide a foil and a contrast to that incredible rich butteriness from the milk. And the Verdicchio just sort of ticked all the boxes because it's got that sort of, well, classically naturally high acidity, fresh lemon, zesty kind of citrus characteristics in the fruit in the wine, but then you get sort of a bitter almond minerality that runs through it as well. So it's a very typical Italian white. It's also become deeply unfashionable in recent years, and I think that it should be drunk a little bit more often, because if people enjoy a more mineral style of white wine, which is unoaked and very fresh, Verdicchio is a really good option. Lots of Italian whites are a good option, but Verdicchio in particular, I think, can offer really good value for money. And you do get a lot of bang for your buck. But I knew it would also work with the olives.
How does this I got the acidity with the Verdicchio first. So how does that acidity and structure really work with this style of cheese in a kind of master of wine way? Can you explain that to us?
You've got it's taking something that's rich. I mean, there's obviously an acidity in the cheese itself, but the prevalent feeling in the cheese is sort of the richness and the fat and the protein. And you take something that's sort of fresh and acidic and you put it together, and one balances the other. So if you apply the metaphor of putting lemon and sugar on a pancake, if you have just sugar on your pancake, it's too sweet, but you add some just lemon, it'll be too sour, but the two together provide balance. A similar thing is hopefully happening here, where you've got sort of freshness and crispness in the wine being paired with something that has richness and a lovely fatty, creamy texture. And it allows the two to balance each other. So the wine feels less austere, and the cheese doesn't necessarily feel less creamy and fatty, but it allows your palate to be refreshed so that you can continue eating.
There we go, ladies and gentlemen. You got that straight from a master of wine this evening. Look at that. That's great. So with the olives?
So that's, I mean, the joy of things like Italian whites is that they work really well with things that would naturally fall within an antipasti board. So an olive is a perfect thing to have with it, in the same way that, you know, if you've got a white Rioja or an Albarino in Spain, it will work really well with olives and almonds. Things like Verdicchio, Pecorino, Soave, any wine like that will also work beautifully with that sort of range of flavors. And also that lemon citrus character in the wine will work well with the lemon citrus character that's in the marinade of the olives, and that herbaceous character. And so what I'm always hoping is that you're threading flavors through. So you've got sort of the herbs and the lemon on the olives and the saltiness of the olives, working with that sort of vegetal, slightly mineral, floral character in the cheese, but also working with the wine sort of underpinning of sort of bitter almonds and minerality. So you have a thread that runs through all the flavors and it ties it all together. That's the goal anyway.
That's the goal. That's a very good goal. And I think we've done really well with it this evening. For people discovering Verdicchio for the first time, what should they look for in a glass when pairing it with cheese like Golden Say?
I mean, it's an interesting variety. We tend to drink it younger, but it will age. And as it ages, it becomes nuttier in character. So that almond character becomes more obviously prevalent. But what you should look for if you're buying one with a recent vintage is something that's sort of a nice pale color when you pour it in the glass, because I prefer them. They're not usually oaked. Doesn't mean there isn't someone who's putting it into an oak barrel. But that fresh clarity of color. So and often get green tints. So the name Verdicchio comes from verde, because the grapes are very green when you look at them. When they're fully ripe almost, they don't go super yellow. And they're quite interesting. They almost have two bunches on the side and a bunch that hangs down the middle. And they believe that it's linked to, they call it Trebbiano di Lugano or Turbiano up by Lake Garda. So if you enjoy the wines of Lake Garda, the white wines, it's a very similar or related, genetically related grape variety. So they call it, so it comes from that. So these green tints and flecks often appear when you look at the wine under clear light. And you want to find aromas that are resonant of of things like, there's sometimes when they're very young, you get a fermentary characteristic, which is like, I always associate with, it's not yeasty in the sense of an aged champagne, but it's a smell that I associate with yeast when a wine's young, particularly if they've used a more commercial added yeast rather than a natural fermentation. But you want that fresh clarity on the nose, citrus fruit, and just a hint of something else. And that's usually almond or a nutty character that just sits underneath but isn't tremendously prevalent. And that just adds a little bit of dynamic and complexity to the wine.
Well, I think it's a delicious wine, Catherine. Thank you for your expertise as always. Genuinely brilliant. The cheese, Jake, is incredible, and the olives. I think that the combo tonight's great as well. We mustn't not mention these beautiful little shortbreads as well. These are New Forest shortbreads, and I chose them with Tracy Thew, that owns the company. That we'd have them with lemon. All natural ingredients, real butter, which she harps on about a lot, which is really important. And you might think she's harping on about it, but there's so many shortbread biscuits being made with rapeseed oil and other oils, etc. If you haven't tried these biscuits already, ladies and gentlemen, do try them with your cheese and the whole package together, because it works really well as well. But they are our mainstay biscuit in the box, so you'll get them every month in the box with your cheese. And I'll be looking at different scenarios and pairings, and we'll get Tracy on again one week to talk about her biscuits. So we've got a question here. We're on questions now, ladies and gentlemen. Sandy, Brennan, James, Catherine, Jake. We're having a lovely time with all the cheese, wine, and olives. Is there a word for that farm, barn, and forest floor aroma? It's in the cheese and the olives too. I'm going to give that to you, Catherine.
Oh, thanks. I suppose if you were dividing it up as a sort of how the palate perceives taste, you would probably put it under that umami characteristic category, sort of other flavors, things like that you get in the same sort of flavors that you get in miso, soy sauce, Marmite, Bovril, those kind of flavors.
Yeah.
Or I mean, it's a sense of place in a way. There's a wonderful winemaking book that you get when you do sort of your early certificates with Wine and Spirit Education Trust. And it's by a guy called Bryce Ranking, who's Australian. And there's a glossary at the back of wine terms. And when it gets to terroir, which obviously is bandied around a lot in wine, his definition, being very Australian, is French for earthy. So maybe you could use terroir as a good terminology for those characteristics, because it's sort of the land and nature.
What do you think, Jake? Have you got any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like I say, it's all by association, isn't it? Like you don't necessarily taste the floor of something, but but it's funny. It's something that kind of triggers in your mind that the smell and like the flavor comes together in one kind of harmony, I think. And yeah, it's I agree. Like it's funny how the two of them do kind of bring something of a similar characteristic to the table, I think. Yeah.
It's really lovely to take time to experience, and as I think going back to the beginning of the evening, taking time to slow down and consider what we eat and taste. And I think this is just exemplified that, really, about taking time to think about what we're eating, which is the whole purpose of doing tastings like this. So we also had some Neil Cutland, just show this very quickly. Really enjoying this. This is my Christmas present from my wife, Alison. Well done, Alison. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Neil. Do tell your friends. And we had Ian say as well, love the Verdicchio. The gentle citrus and acidity cuts across the cheese so well. Hope it stays out of fashion so the price stays good. And Sandy said, love the wine as usual, Catherine. Thank you. This will also make an appearance during our dinner. Well done.
There's a lovely comment about the rind that I thought was really interesting that Ian made.
Where was that?
It's probably further up, but he said it reminds him of Granny Smith apple, and I thought that was really.
There we go.
There is a note.
So the rind has a Granny Smith apple kind of smell. Yeah, absolutely.
That was a lovely way
I can get that as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's in there.
Yeah. Orchards.
And Lee Porter, well done, Lee. Really delicious, with lots of emojis there as well. Get those emojis in whilst you can. So
I asked
think
a couple of questions. Can I ask them, James? I've got a couple of questions. So my first question is, do you make the cheese consistently throughout the year then? Because I mean, you mentioned sort of the summer milk and winter milk.
Yeah. So we do. With this, I mean, we make all of our cheeses year round. As I say, it's just there are just slight tweaks that you have to make, really. Whether it's the amount of salt that's added is quite a key one, really. The amount that the curds are drained, so the amount of whey that's taken off, and kind of your pressing as well. And then kind of there's variations in our maturing rooms kind of throughout the year that we have to adjust humidity and temperature and things like that. But it changes throughout the year, definitely. Like we noticed that with Spenwood and with Golden Say. But it's kind of part of the charm of artisan, really, and it not being a completely, whilst we do obviously strive for consistency, it not being exactly the same all year round is part of its charm.
Yeah,
it's not.
And the other question from Catherine was, do you make this throughout the year as well, Jake?
But that's what he just said. That's what he just answered.
Oh, sorry, I was busy looking at banners now.
You're having to run the show, to be fair. My other question might be a really obvious one, but it comes from someone who knows a lot less about cheese than they do about wine. What's the difference between a cheddar method and a pecorino method in terms of making?
Yeah, so it's generally down to the amount of whey that's taken off. So there's quite a few differences with cheddar. So with cheddar, a lot more of the whey is taken off, and you're kind of left with this mass of curd that's then cut into slabs. The slabs are then stacked on top of each other to acidify, and that's cheddaring term. Cheddaring is stacking up like that. It's then cut into strips, and then it's put through a mill to kind of make it a bit more accessible, and then it's salted. Pecorino, you skip a lot of that by not going through the draining, right? You don't drain it anywhere near as much. So we mold, we're kind of constantly moving the curds and keeping them broken apart by hand, and keeping them the size that we want during the scald, which is where the vat is heated to just slowly cook the outsides of the curds, not overly cook them, but you're just kind of slightly cooking them. That release moisture from the curds. And then whilst there's still a fair, I mean, we do take off quite a lot of whey, a lot more than you do with soft cheese. But whilst there's still a fair bit in there, they get transferred into the mold. So you're retaining quite a lot of moisture, but by doing it earlier than you are with cheddar, you're creating a much less acidic cheese at the end of it. So that kind of contributes to it being like a milder profile, and you don't tend to get a lot of acid coming through in our cheeses than you with more of a, say, Lancashire cheese or something like that, or like a cheddar. So yeah, that's kind of the key difference. It takes a lot more people, I think, which is a bit of a kick in the teeth, but it you can kind of you sometimes see huge vats of cheddar being done by two very strong people, whereas we have to have more people on it for kind of a shorter period of time, because it can quickly get very difficult to move the curds out of the vat into the molds, because it is
that's important. Super quick before it changes.
Yeah, exactly.
There was very briefly cheddaring. I visited lots of cheddar makers, of course, and there's a couple of cheddar makers. When you go in, you know they're cheddar makers because their arms are very, very large biceps. It's proper handmade cheddar makers. What do you do for a living? You must be the cheddar maker.
With a sideline in.
It's always going to be the largest armed lady or man in the room is going to be the cheddar maker. That's it. So thank you very much to all of my participants this evening for their exceptional produce and talk and information, and a kind of a gateway into learning much more about cheese and wine, which is an amazing platform that we've got. So thank you so much for your time. for the benefit of the cheese crowd, we have got a membership area which is due to open up. Your codes will be sent over to you soon. Tell your friends, where you're going to be getting discounts at certain delicatessens, potentially other wine shops, etc., and also to festivals as well coming up. So keep tuned, and do go to www.therealcheeseproject.co.uk to find out more information, and do read the Bites. That's our digital program. We've dropped the zine now, but we do have the Bites, which contains a lot of content about the cheesemakers and everybody else that gets involved with the Real Cheese Project. Lots of exciting things happening. Cheese Crowd, thank you very much indeed. I'm going to say goodbye to my friends at the Cheese Crowd. If my lovely crew can stay with me for a minute, that would be great afterwards. But from me, it's goodbye and thank you to the Cheese Crowd, and thank you to my guests. And from Jake, it's goodbye and thank you. And from Catherine, thank you so much. It's lovely to have you all with us. Thank you very much, Cheese Crowd. We'll see you very, very soon for a very exciting cheese tasting coming up soon with a very exciting and absolutely terrific cheesemaker that you'll meet very soon next month. Thank you.